Okay, well, my name is Sholto Macpherson. I'm editor of digitalfirst.com and head of content for Accountech.Live. Thank you for spending your lunch hour, eating your sandwich at your desk, listening in to this webinar. I promise it will be the perfect accompaniment. Today, we're going to talk with one of the presenters from the Accountech.Live Expo on a topic that I find absolutely fascinating. The line between small business accounting software and ERPs is blurring at the lower end. You always had extensions to MYB that could take it further, but now the core accounting engine is becoming much more powerful, to the point where small business accounting software is replacing ERPs in some smaller businesses. I cannot think of anyone better suited for talking about this topic than Matt Paff. Matt was general manager of Accountech, which sells ERP to companies with 2 million to 20 million in turnover. He also runs a software integration company that was acquired by Accountech, and these days is consulting to hospitality chains, NGOs, and other larger SMEs about selecting accounting software. And don't ever ask him about payroll. He just knows far too much on that topic. Matt's session, I should mention, is one of 130 seminars, roundtables, tech talks at Accountech.Live across 2 days. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, calling all the way in from straight-laced Singapore, Mr. Matt Paff. Matt, can you hear me? Well, let me just take you off mute, unmute.
Yes, I can hear you, Sholto. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can we get video?
Let me see if I can turn my video on.
It's always better to see you.
I'm struggling to see my video button. I can see my audio button. Have you given me permission to do my video, Sholto?
Let me just check. Promote the panelist. Let's have a look.
I can do video.
There we go. How are you, Matt?
Very well, very well.
How's Singapore?
Perfect. Yeah, very interesting. Just been up here for the accounting and finance show, which, to be honest, very aligned to what you guys are doing with the Accountech.Live and the Business Expo. Yeah, action-packed couple of days. Yeah, very interesting learnings. I think they're only early in their journey, but what I found very interesting is they're mixing the discussion about cloud versus desktop with discussions about blockchain and crypto and all these things. These are discussions we seem to have 10 years apart, but they're happening simultaneously up here. You know, it's very interesting.
Okay, so getting to your session, how would you, let's step back, how would you summarize the changes happening to small business accounting software in reference to ERP, given, say, from when you started at Accountech, I can't remember how many years ago. What's changed?
18 years ago, I think it was, Sholto. Yeah, look, a lot's changed. We used to talk in terms of integration being ODBC drivers and CSV files. And we used to do all sorts of crazy things outside the core accounting application, and then effectively, you know, import it back in with direct SQL injections or ODBC writes or CSV imports more often than not. And then really what's changed with the cloud is integration has just become so much more reliable and so much easier using modern RESTful API and SOAP as another one. So basically, there's just ways to get data between cloud applications that just didn't exist on the desktop going back when I started in the industry. And so the key point of difference is that writing and reading data has become much more modern and easy, and that's led to a proliferation of an ecosystem that surrounds I call them the big whales of small business accounting tech with Intuit and Xero, and to a lesser extent the likes of Sage, etc. These guys are surrounding themselves with, they use the term add-ons. Those systems probably, I think they're more than add-ons. They're probably core to the business operation function, and they just happen to send some information across to the accounting system. So yeah, look, the big change has been it's much easier to integrate, and then ultimately once you have that easy and better integration, there's a greater desire to integrate. So where people may have historically manually entered or manually done things in Excel, there's a real desire to get rid of those manual processes and automate them.
So as a guy that used to sell ERP, how does this new wave of cloud accounting software change that sales proposition?
Sholto, I used to have the common pitch. I'd go typically to an MYOB Accountech.Live desktop customer, and they would be experiencing the same problems over and over again. They'd be reaching the limits of the database. The system would be slow to run reports. Ultimately, they were trying to do things outside of the system, tracking different prices for different customers. All these things were just consistent time and time again. These are why people needed to go beyond MYOB Accountech.Live and to a lesser extent, what used to be called QuickBooks Desktop, now Reckon Accounts. Common stories. These systems were never written back in the day. Like Accountech.Live started in 1982 by a company in the US called Teleware. That code base was written for Mac, and then it evolved over years to be a Windows product. Underneath it was a horrible product, and basically on a network, it didn't really work very well. So we'd come in with a system that was built for networks, and we'd just basically talk to those points. It's going to be faster. It's going to basically be able to handle more data. You're going to be able to integrate better with it because, these systems weren't built for integration, and you're going to have better audit trails around how you use the system, et cetera, et cetera. And really, I guess how this talk came about, Sholto, is recently I helped a client make a decision to go with a small business solution plus add-ons over a mid-market solution. And let's call them the losing vendor who didn't get the deal in the mid-market ERP sends an email to my client with 7 reasons why small business software can't work for their company. And the 7 reasons were the same 7 reasons I was using 18 years ago, but the world moved on.
They sent it to the wrong guy.
Yeah, it was just, and it really got my goat. Like, are you not aware of what's happened in the last 20 years with small business accounting software? Do you not know about the cloud? Do you not know about the fact that integration's a lot better and a lot easier? Do you not know they've got things like audit trails and these things in their product these days? And it just really frustrated me. And the thing is, an uneducated market will read those things and they'll be scared and, we can't possibly go with something that's only going to cost $50 a month because this system over here that's going to cost $2,500 a month is going to basically do these things that we can't get out of small business software. And it's false selling, and it really gets my goat.
So let's step in the shoes of the client for a little bit. What can you tell us about them? How big were they? How many staff? What was their core business?
This was a not-for-profit. They were using a product currently known as Sage Line 300 Construction and Real Estate. It's a mouthful. It used to be called Timberline for those who've been around the industry for long enough. It's an acquisition Sage made many years ago, and really they haven't done a lot with the product for a number of years. But it's what you would consider an ERP solution. This was a not-for-profit that runs events, and they run a lot of big events. And the reason they would have gone with Timberline back in the day is because it was very strong at costing by project or costing by event. Mm. And so when they basically decided, hey, it's end of life for this product, we've got to look at something else. Their initial and first thought is, well, we're paying a lot of money for Timberline. We're a mid-market customer. We've got to go and look at the mid-market. And so they went out to the market, they had a look, and basically they decided that they were going to go with MYOB EXO. And happened to be one of my former staff worked for them and rang me up and said, Matt, you seem to know about these things. What do you think about MYOB EXO? We're going to put that in. Is that a good idea? And I sorry to the EXO people on the line, I just don't see why you'd go and put in a desktop product now when it's 2018 and you know that it's got a finite life. You know that the world's moving to the cloud. Why make a change now? If you want to go with a mid-market system, why not look at something like MYOB Advanced or NetSuite or Dynamics 365? But look at one of those platform plays if that's where you want to go. Anyway, another 3 months goes past and she rings me up and says, okay, we've decided to go with MYOB Advanced. Do you think that's the right choice? And I laughed and I said, well, I don't know what your requirements are. You just ask me what do I think. For certain customers, Advanced is going to be the right fit. But I don't know what you need. How about I come in and we'll just have a quick chat. I won't charge you because you're an old employee of mine, and we'll talk about what your needs are, and then we'll align your needs to what product I think you should use. So I proceeded to go in. I met with the CFO and a few of the account staff, and basically they laid out what they need. And the core requirement they had was purchasing. And in fact, they weren't even doing purchasing in Timberline. They'd custom written a purchase order approval process. And then, you know, their other big need was payroll. And for those who actually know MYOB Advanced, the payroll in MYOB Advanced is pretty horrible at this stage. It's very immature. It doesn't do a whole heap of stuff. And I started to go, well, really, your requirements from an accounting perspective sound pretty simple. You want to be able to do profit and loss by class code or location or tag or whatever terminology you want to use. And, you know, that's pretty standard of small business products. But you've got this need for procurement where you've got 20 odd staff who need to do purchase orders, and there's a approval workflow around it. Well, there's a product called Approval Max that works pretty well in that space. And in fact, from a user experience point of view, is going to be better than what you get out of MYOB Advanced. There's a nice mobile app, there's easy workflows, and it's $53 a month.
Let's not not steal the thunder from your session. You know, I want people to come and hear the meat of it. But just something I find really interesting. So, literally just before this call, I got a phone call from a guy who I happened to go to school with, and it was a really similar situation. What amazed me, you talking there about how they had scripted their own software. He's running a property investment company through the family, and they built their own property management tool and accounting tool for doing, like, it seems crazy, but it feels like there are quite a few, not even large businesses, that have just gone DIY and built their own stuff and don't realize how much technology is available today for really reasonable prices. So it feels like there's, from an accountant's and bookkeeper's perspective, there's a huge opportunity to say to their SME clients, let's just stop and take a look at exactly what you did. What are your requirements? What's out there, and how much does it cost? Because you're probably going to be surprised. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely. And it's about education, Sholto. The problem, you know, the reason I started my blog 3 years ago is I think the average punter on the street isn't educated about what's happening in the industry. And it's very hard, you know, except for things like the Digital First website, to actually find information on what's really going on. You know, and in the case of the client I'm talking about, they'd spent 6 months. They had 48 different demos from, you know, different suppliers, and they were basically, their head was spinning, and they just wanted someone to tell them what to do. And funny enough, an old boss of mine once described the industry that we're in is, why do doctors, when you go to the doctor and they tell you need to do X, Y, Z or take this drug, we never question it. We just basically say, okay, well, I'll go and buy that drug from the chemist. But there doesn't seem to be the professional in our industry who just goes, well, I know what you need, basically based on your requirements, this is what I prescribe. And there seems to be a thirst from the consumer, just tell me what to do, this is all too hard, you know. And so that's where my business is really sort of focused, is around saying, hey, you know, we've got 20 years experience here. I can shortcut the way to make these decisions. But getting back to your point, I've been shocked. I was dealing with a large hospitality company that had written their own accounting system recently, you know, and we moved them onto NetSuite. Just to make the point, I'm not anti-ERP in any way, shape or form. In fact, the last 3 clients I've helped have gone on to ERP systems, and there's a time and a place, and I'm going to have a slide in my presentation where I talk to, we used to have 5 different market segments in accounting tech, from micro to small to medium to enterprise to corporate. And really what I'm seeing is there's two that are emerging that are really eating the others, which is the small and effectively the enterprise. And you've got these platforms that are emerging. Salesforce is a platform, and it is a key player in businesses moving forward. And there are 3 accounting systems on the Salesforce platform today, in Financial Force, Canandi, and Sage Live, as it used to be known. I forget what it's called now. They
Sage Business
call
Cloud.
their names to Business Cloud, Financials, or And then you got Microsoft, who's got
It's too short.
Microsoft, Dynamics
Business Central.
365, Business Central, and Operations and Finance. And so there's these platforms out there that are this convergence of CRM, ERP, and HCM. You know, Workday's come out of the HCM space, and it's now an ERP, comprehensive corporate level solution. And we're seeing more and more of this convergence to this centralized, unified platform with single sign-on, single user interface. And where a business needs or wants that and is willing to invest in the resources to drive and implement that, then ERP is a really good solution. I still don't understand why you don't get decent bank feeds and some AI around coding and these sorts of things in these systems. But I think in the next couple of years, they're going to wake up and you're going to start to see that stuff. But nonetheless, people need to understand that ERP has a place. But if you're a small not-for-profit and really all you need is a purchasing workflow, do you really need to go and spend all the money on an ERP for a unified platform if you're not driven by needing that or wanting a system administrator to have to drive that for you? And invariably, that's where I think the line is really being drawn and changing.
I was talking to Blake Oliver, the Cloud Accounting Weekly newsletter writer and Flowcast cloud evangelist.
And podcaster.
And many other things, based in the States. And he was saying, we spoke last week, I was on his podcast, and he was saying that he read something on digitalfirst.com about small business moving up into the lower end of ERP, and he said he was skeptical. But then he went to a conference and met with the CFO, who was doing everything he could to stay on the small business, like using QBO and various other things, because he felt like the experience was so much better on the small business software, and the cost and I take it, I totally agree with you, ERP at the right time, the right place. But it feels to me like that there is this there is a segment of the market that thinks that, oh yeah, I'm big enough now to go with ERP, but in reality, there's a big opportunity here for accountants and bookkeepers to show them actually you can get a lot out of what you've already got, or move to something that will give you so many of those features. So, and let's just have a quick chat about that, because I think it's important. How would you compare? So a lot of the people on this call wouldn't know what, say, a Great Plains looks like these ERPs that an SME may have bought in 1990s or 2000s even. How would that compare to, say, a QBO or a Xero in terms of user experience? And you've mentioned bank fee, but
look, it was all summed up for me. I visited the client we were speaking about. I visited them the other day just to check in, see how things are going, you know. Yeah. And Julie, who's the main data entry operator, the accounts payable and payroll lady in this business, I said, how's it all going, Julie? And she said, Matt, you don't understand. You've actually changed my life. Like, I've got and she was quite emotional about it. She said, I've got a different job. She goes, everything in Timberline was just so hard. I had to do 48 steps to do things, and now it's just easy, you know. And she was really, and that hit the nail on the head for me, right? And I use the analogy, if you've got a wholesale business and you can do your deliveries with a little car, a ute, or a motorbike, it's really easy to get anybody off the street to do those deliveries for you, because most people have a car license or whatever. But if you need to use a B-double truck to drive your stock across country and get it to your customers, you can't just go and get any Joe Blow off the street to drive that truck. That truck needs to be driven by someone with not just a truck license, but a B-double truck license, right? And there's not many of those people out there. And so you need to pay them more money than you would the guys just driving the car, and you need to basically ensure the safety around that. And the reality is, if you try and drive that truck into the city, it's going to be much harder to do the same things that you were doing in the little car or the motorbike. But the reality is, that's where the line between small business and ERP is you've got to expect they're going to be harder to use, because they are. But it's like needing a truck. You're going to need someone who knows what they're doing to administer that system and really drive it. And the users are not going to have as nice of an experience with those products as they might otherwise have with a QBO or a Xero or an Approval Max and these sorts of tools, because governance states and flexibility states that we've got to add more features to the product, but we also need to make it more rigid in the way that they use it so we don't make mistakes and yada, yada, yada. And it ends up being a horrible user experience. And I think that's a problem that the ERP systems can actually solve over the next 5 years, but I don't feel they are wanting to yet, because they're not getting as much pushback, because they're still converting desktop customers to ERP. And so the experience of an MYB AccountRight Classic customer moving to an MYB EXO or an Advance or an Attaché or something like that, it's actually, they're going from a horrible old technology to, not a bad user experience. Whereas if you're going from a Xero and a QBO, which you do everything on your phone, or you're basically learnt yourself because it's so easy, and then you go and try and drive an EXO where you have to post batches and things like that, and it's just blows people's minds. Look, as an example, I know a mid-market, and I'm going to say MYB Advanced partner, who's basically given up. The experience of having unhappy customers through that process has driven them to distraction, and they've sold off their MYB Advanced business because they just find the expectation of the user when they're coming off MYB Classic to MYB Advanced, they're just not getting the user experience that they might get if you converted them to another product. So it's a fascinating time in history, because there just really is a gap in that user experience design.
Yeah, I've got a theory on this, because last year I went to Oracle Open World in San Francisco and was in the big press conference with the CEO Mark Hurd, and I asked him, what's the deal when you're going to start adding bank feeds to NetSuite and the Oracle ERPs and so on, and why aren't you using machine learning in the accounting side of it? And he kind of looked at me and said, well, why would we're using it on the edge, we want to automate the supply chain first, and there's all this opportunity there, and my impression is they can see that the opportunities are bigger where it's more industry specific, the software is more industry specific, and also they're thinking more about the CFO. They don't really care about the user experience of people in the finance team. I mean, they're not paying for the product; they'll just do whatever they're told to do. That's the mentality I get, which is very different to a small business accounting software where it's either the business owner or someone that actually has a role in the person.
A decision maker.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Someone who can actually decide to change systems is the person who has to deal with the data entry day to day.
So just getting back to the opportunity for bookkeepers and accountants here, because I think something you said about education is a really fascinating point. What do you think is the opportunity for, say, accountants and bookkeepers in public practice to help SMEs make these decisions?
I think there's a convergent evolution happening. When I was running my consulting firm, 12, 13 years ago, I was what I called a software consultant. I wasn't an accountant. I wasn't a bookkeeper. All I did for my clients is, you might call them a value-added reseller these days, but I called myself a software consultant. I built quite a healthy business consulting on software, and invariably I ended up finding myself consulting on business process and what should I do as a business owner to operate more efficiently, or how do I grow my sales? These things came out of being the technology guy, because I could give them the technology and the tools to get the answers that they were looking for. And that was a very distinct profession going back to the noughties when I was doing that. Fast forward another decade, and there's a convergent evolution in professional services. We're seeing the big four basically become comprehensive everything to everybody firms. They got marketing departments now, outsourced marketing. They do anything and everything. And I think they are a little bit of a litmus test to the future of what people want. And I think if you have a look at retail, the emergence of the category killer, as it's called in retail, the Bunnings of the world, the Rebel Sports, these sorts of guys, people want to go one place and get what they want. And so with bookkeeping and accounting and software consulting, rather than being three distinct separate professions, I start to see them converge. And so your bookkeeper, who, if you're using systems like, Receipt Bank and these sorts of tools, the light years of the world, really a large part of what used to be their traditional role going back a decade is being automated into workflows around AP automation, and payroll systems are making it much easier to process payroll these days. And so you don't have to enter timesheets. The timesheet's already collected and approved by the time it gets to the payroll officer. So a lot of the role of the traditional bookkeeper is being automated out of existence. But those bookkeepers have such an important role to play in the advisory side. And advisory isn't this mythical thing that's about all of a sudden becoming the world's best business consultant. Advisory can start with, hey, I learned this from my other customer the other day. There's something called the Johari window. If people don't know about the Johari window, it sums up this convergence of the industry and where they should be, which is engaging with the client and realizing that you actually learnt something from the client. You've got something to give the client, but the client always has something to give you. And in a proper consulting business, every client engagement I do, I learn something new, and I take that to my next consulting gig, if that makes sense. And I'm constantly evolving my knowledge because I'm learning things through the process. A bookkeeper has the ability to do that with technology. An accountant has the ability to do that with technology. And so this role of the software consultant is almost disappearing because people don't need a dedicated software consultant. They want an advisor who can help them with the bookkeeping and the accounting and these sorts of things. So my advice to the bookkeepers and the accountants out there is, it might seem big and scary to get into advisory, but advisory starts with just actually engaging with your customers and seeing how you can automate processes and do things by putting add-ons like the Light Years of the worlds and the receipt banks against the accounting system. And then that's one process automated and simplified for the client. Now, what else do we need to look at? Do we need to look at your inventory? Do we need to look at your sales reporting? What else do you need? And actually be to the client, I actually might not know the answer, but hey, I'm going to have a look. I'm going to talk to some people I know, and we might be able to find you an add-on that can actually do these things for you. And so this is where that customer might have gone to their bookkeeper or accountant and said, oh, can I do this, that, and the other in Xero or QuickBooks Online or Mile? And the bookkeeper historically might have said, oh, no. And then that person would have gone and looked at ERP because they can't get that in the system. Whereas these days, that bookkeeper, that accountant can say, well, actually, there might be an add-on for that. Let's have a look. And, you know, back in the day, those who remember, there used to be add-ons to MYOB desktop, as you mentioned at the start, like DataPel and a few others. Estendo, I can't forget the guys in New Zealand. But these add-ons, there were probably a dozen. There's now 700 plus that then encircle the big platforms, right? So there's generally someone who's thought of something and done something, and there are these fanboys who never want to leave the Xeros and the QuickBooks of the world, and they'll go and get all these add-ons and they'll build these effectively ERP systems up into very big businesses, but still their general ledger and their accounts payable sits inside the small business product.
Yeah, so I think it makes me also wonder whether the accountant bookkeeper becomes a point person and says, that's you clearly having a problem with, say, your sales. I don't know all the CRMs that are right for your particular industry, but I'll pull someone in and we'll probably see more partnerships. And I know that accountants seem to have been a little wary, I guess, of pulling in other providers because they want to make sure they own the customer and that relationship and the fear of churn. But it seems to me like it's inevitable that you need to find the right people. And I'm starting to see some accounting firms, actually one that's talking at the expo, Power Tynan, and this is a really fascinating topic. Talk about it for a long time, but they're helping SMEs get their databases ready to get the data out to get into the accounting software, and they've got a data engineer that they're now hiring out to accounting firms. And these are accounting firms that have advisory. They're actually doing the business advisory, but they don't know how to. When the SME says, "Oh, our database is all shot," then they've got they're out, you know. And so there's that trust there. So
you don't have to be all things to all people. It's about connecting the dots.
Exactly.
You know, my dad used to run a trucking company, and when he basically sold the trucking business, he was still in his sort of mid-50s. And the next job that he had, he basically was just the guy who people went to because he knew everybody, because he used to do the deliveries to all the different companies. Hey, Paffy, I need to get my dam cleared out. Who's going to clear my dam out? And Dad would just ring up a mate, and the mate would give him a cut, and they basically get the dam cleared out. And basically, it was a dot point guy. And actually, at the time, I was going, oh, that's kind of what I do as a software consultant, because in effect, I know where my limits are. If I need a good bookkeeper, I'll call that person. If I need a good payroll person, I'll get that person in. And so, yeah, you hit a big point. They don't have to do it themselves. They need to just have a network of people that they can call on, that they trust, and they bring them in, and they they have a trust relationship where they know their client's not going to be stolen from them.
So look, Matt, we're right up on 12:30, isn't it? I was just going to say, isn't it funny how we all turn into our parents? You can hear the rest of Matt's session. It is on the Wednesday, so Accountech.Live is on November 13th and 14th. Matt's is on the 14th on the Wednesday, 2:40 p.m. to 3:10 p.m. There's no way he's going to be able to get all that done in half an hour, but he's a very generous guy with his time, and I'm sure he would be happy to share more if you buy him a beer afterwards. Matt, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy Singapore. And
thanks, Sholto. Thanks, everybody.
I just tell everyone else a reminder that it's completely free to attend Accountech.Live if you're an accountant or bookkeeper. If you register before November 12, it costs $60 thereafter. So that's the incentive. You can turn up for 1 hour. You can turn up for 5 hours. Choose topics. It's jam-packed full of awesome content and product updates, new releases. Lots of things. This blurb is very long. Anyway, the point is register at Accountech.Live today and you'll meet some of the greatest minds in accounting. Thank you all very much for attending today. Matt, thanks again. And I'll see you all in November. Thanks very much.
See you, Sholto.
Bye-bye.